Welcome to this explainer. Take a second and think about that glowing screen right in the palm of your hand. We use it to connect with friends, to learn new things, or just to kind of zone out at the end of a long day. But what if that exact same screen has actually become the most active frontline for radical recruitment? Today, we're unpacking a fascinating and honestly a pretty sobering analysis from Dr. Eggo's book, The Death of Utopia. We're going to zero in specifically on Chapter 12 to look at exactly how Dr. Eggo argues the mechanics of extremist grooming have fundamentally shifted. They've moved from deep, remote jungles directly into our daily digital news feeds. This isn't just about politics, folks. It's a deep dive into the psychology of how our attention is captured and literally weaponized. Okay, let's jump right into this forensic breakdown. We're going to cover the new digital battlefield, the extremist playbook, the arouse, organize, mobilize framework, how they weaponize human emotion, and finally, how open societies can actually respond.
Section 1. The new digital battlefield. Let's look at where this invisible war is actually being fought today.
Historically, we've always pictured underground recruitment relying on physical proximity, right? Think of the old stereotypes: smoky college dorm rooms, whispered, secretive meetings in the back of campus canteens, or those organized exposure trips that bring students out to really remote rural areas. But the source material highlights a massive, terrifying shift. The modern recruiter doesn't actually need you to ever leave your bedroom. The new battlefield? It happens at 1:47 a.m. It happens while a user is just doom-scrolling alone in the dark. According to Dr. Eko, algorithms actively prioritize highly emotive, outrage-inducing content just to keep us engaged. And the recruiters know this. They literally wait for a user to rage react to a carefully clipped, out-of-context video of some perceived injustice, and then they swoop in and invite them into anonymous chat groups. That romanticized image of the guerrilla fighter hiding in the mountains, it's been entirely replaced by the cold, clinical efficiency of social media algorithms.
Moving to Section 2, the extremist digital playbook. Let's see how this builds into a highly structured system for capturing attention. This quote right here from the text is absolutely crucial to understanding the whole mechanism. They don't start with communism. They start with "Kumusta ka." For those who might not know, that means "how are you" in Tagalog. According to the book's analysis of Philippine insurgent networks, digital groomers do not lead with heavy, dense ideological theory. If they opened with a Marxist manifesto, most people would simply scroll right past it. Instead, they manipulate you by offering a friendly, deceptive ear. They scan comment sections and public posts looking for signs of distress, loneliness, or frustration. They offer a sense of personal connection and empathy long before they ever introduce a political doctrine. Chapter 12 actually breaks down the specific profiles of online recruiters operating in these networks, and one of the most prominent and dangerous is called the Joker. Dr. Eko notes that this type of digital groomer often battles real mental health issues of their own, and they just use extremism as a costume to perform their madness. They completely feed on chaos. These are the folks hijacking mental health support forums or deliberately stirring up toxic drama in private group chats. They thrive on conflict. But here is the truly terrifying part. The Joker often doesn't give a single thought to the revolution or the political ideology itself. They care entirely about manipulation and control, and they specifically prey on other vulnerable users who are openly experiencing emotional or psychological struggles online.
Section 3. Arouse, organize, mobilize. Let's look at the specific framework these recruiters are using. Dr. Ego makes this incredibly crucial point. International models of violent extremist grooming actually map perfectly onto a very specific, repeatable three-step framework. It's arouse, organize, and mobilize. Step 1, arouse, is all about inducing deep emotional vulnerability. The recruiter hooks into a target's existing anger or sadness, and they intensely validate those feelings. Then we hit step 2, organize. This is where the really deep psychological manipulation happens. The author explains that recruiters systematically isolate the target. They'll convince a young recruit that their parents or teachers just don't understand the real truth, painting them as part of some oppressive system. This deliberately cuts the recruit's real-world ties, completely replacing their personal identity with this new group identity. Finally, step 3, mobilize, is the tragic endpoint. The now isolated and reprogrammed individual is fully weaponized, directed to take real-world, sometimes violent, action for the cause.
Section 4. Weaponizing human emotion. Let's dive into the underlying mechanics of why this is so effective online.
It's a question we really just have to pause and ask ourselves, right? Why does extremism win online? What is it about our modern digital habits that makes us so incredibly susceptible to this exact kind of manipulation? Well, Dr. Edko brilliantly outlines what he calls the algorithm of radicalization. It's basically how our actually scratch that, it's how our very raw human struggles are aggressively matched with these dangerous extreme solutions. Think about it. Algorithms show us these highly curated feeds of other people's perfect lives, which can profoundly amplify our own loneliness or confusion. When the internet amplifies a user's confusion with endless conflicting information, extremists step in to offer absolute black and white certainty. When a user feels profound loneliness, the recruiters offer a tight-knit, albeit totally toxic, family. When there's anger at the state of the world, they provide a very clear, specific enemy to hate. And when there's just mundane, everyday boredom, they offer the grand illusion of joining a historic, heroic adventure. It's a perfect toxic supply, seamlessly meeting a very real human demand. Now, once a user takes the bait, that trap has to be shut tight. The source outlines how recruiters create this impenetrable digital echo chamber using literal thought control tactics. I mean, think about how easily an algorithm already creates harmless echo chambers for our hobbies, right? Like only showing you the sports you already watch. Now imagine that mechanism deliberately weaponized to isolate someone from logic. Recruiters issue strict directives like do not engage trolls, or they insist that mainstream media is entirely controlled, and ultimately that only the party holds the truth. This completely cuts the recruit off from outside logic, alternative information sources, and systematically shuts down their own internal critical thinking. Which brings us to our final section, how open societies respond. Having seen this playbook, how do we actually fight back? The author argues that the antidote to digital radicalization isn't just generating more counter-propaganda, and it is definitely not just fighting with people in the comment sections. The most effective response? Concrete, real-world development. Take the Barangay Development Program, for example. In the Philippines, a barangay is basically a local village or district. This program focuses on actively building actual infrastructure, local access roads, schools, health clinics, in vulnerable, under-resourced areas. By providing basic services and economic opportunity, an open society structurally disarms the core grievances that these extremists are exploiting online. Because honestly, it's incredibly hard to doom scroll your way into a violent revolution when your local community is visibly and actively being built up right outside your window. This dynamic is powerfully summed up in this testimony from the book. It's from a former rebel of the NPA, that stands for the New People's Army, which is an armed communist rebel group in the Philippines. This former insurgent said, "We left because the government showed up. The NPA only showed up to collect money." Wow, that highlights a profound reality that Dr. Ego emphasizes. When you prove that basic human needs can be met within a democratic framework, you completely dismantle the narrative that violent extremism is the only path forward. To put this whole battle into context, Dr. Ego leans heavily on the philosopher Karl Popper to explain the dividing line here. On one side, you have a closed ideology. This is super attractive to vulnerable people because it offers that absolute certainty we talked about earlier. But the cost? Your life is merely a resource for the cause, and total, unquestioning obedience is required. On the other side, you have the open society. Yes, democracy can be messy, it's slow, it's frustrating, but it gives you room. You have the freedom to argue, to organize peacefully, to leave a group to return, and to push for incremental reform. In an open society, your life belongs to you, not to some predetermined historical script dictated by a recruiter in a chat room. Which leads us right to this defining insight from Karl Popper referenced in the text. Freedom begins where excuses end. An open society doesn't promise you a perfect, flawless utopia. Instead, it relies on individual responsibility. It relies on the courage of citizens and governments to admit their mistakes, to do the hard work of actually fixing them through piecemeal reform, and to categorically reject any movement that uses the dazzling promise of a perfect future to justify committing violence today. Dr. Edgode wraps up his analysis with this fundamental, highly provocative question. When you strip away all the digital tactics, the algorithm manipulation, the anonymous chat groups, and all those dense political theories, it all really just boils down to this. Do you want a world where your children can ask any question and live? It's a stark, incredibly powerful reminder of the true value of critical thinking and exactly why protecting our minds and the minds of the vulnerable in the digital age is the ultimate defense of a free society.